Shalom, friends. This is Daniel with Bless Israel Network, and this is another episode of Eye on Israel. Today I want to talk about the various fronts that we deal with, or battles, or challenges, if you will. I think it's fair to say that most of us have day-to-day issues which are, in many cases, significant, just getting by. You know, you have a place to live, an apartment, a home, a trailer, whatever, and there's responsibilities that go along with that. Maintenance, upkeep, construction issues, plumbing problems, electrical problems, just regular maintenance, furniture issues, air conditioning issues, etc., and there's a lot that goes into that. Most of you probably have jobs, so there's concerns and challenges that go along with working. Some of you may not have a job, and so you need one, so it becomes even more of a challenge. Finances, we all have challenges there. Do we have enough money to pay the bills? Do I have enough insurance to cover my expenses that I've got? Do I even have insurance? Some of you go to worship. Maybe there are challenges with worship and the church or the synagogue or the congregation you attend. You have a vehicle, maybe more than one vehicle, and you have challenges there that you have to address. Gas and insurance and maintenance. You have children. Oh, my Lord, children. All the things you have to deal with there, depending on if they're toddlers, if they're young children, if they're, God forbid, teenagers, okay? Fully grown adults. You might even have grandchildren. So politics and just cultural issues and interacting with your neighbors and on and on and on. The list is very, very long that people just have to deal with in your daily lives. I know that. We've certainly had all of those to deal with. But I want to bring something else to your attention. Imagine if you had all of those issues to deal with, and then let's add a couple of other things to the mix. Being an Israeli, living in Israel, being Jewish and living in Israel, being Messianic and living in Israel. When you throw these into the mix, suddenly you have all kinds of fronts and challenges that many of you may have never thought of before. So today I'm just going to go through some of these to give you an idea of the kinds of things that have to be dealt with. There really isn't any choice. These things we in Israel have to deal with, and just may give you pause to think, and we certainly hope pause to pray about the things that we have to deal with, in addition to all of those other daily things that we have to deal with. So let's just go right down the list. How about the UN? Do you have any idea how much the UN hates Israel, the body of the United Nations? The various organizations within the United Nations have passed more resolutions against Israel than any other nation in the world combined, by far. UNESCO, which is the educational and scientific wing, the Council on Human Rights, on and on and on. There have been resolution after resolution passed against Israel that makes no sense whatsoever. UNESCO has passed resolutions, for example, that make Jerusalem and the Western Wall, the Kotel, a Muslim holy site. Yes. They have passed resolutions which state that Machpelah, which is the cave of the patriarchs in Hebron, is not a Jewish holy site. It's a Muslim holy site. This is insanity, but this is the UN. How about, in addition to that, the EU, the European Union? I think more than any other organization in the world, the EU wants to stick its nose into virtually everything Israel says and does. The EU wants to dictate what Israel's borders should be. How dare they? Israel is an independent sovereign nation, a member of the family of nations, a democratic nation in a very undemocratic region of the world. We're surrounded by over 400 million Arabs who largely really wish we didn't exist. We're trying to survive. We're a country that is the size of New Jersey, 8,000 square miles. And every border, except for the Mediterranean, is an Arab country. And the EU wants to tell us what our borders should be. And the EU, along with many other unfriendly nations, have tried to suggest that there is actually an East, quote unquote, Jerusalem, as a separate, independent city. No, it's not. Jerusalem has never been divided, except for 19 years between 1948, when Israel was reborn, and 1967, when Israel recaptured the old city and unified Jerusalem. Jerusalem is an entire city, undivided. There is an Arab section of Jerusalem in the eastern portion of Jerusalem, where approximately 300,000 so-called Palestinians, and if most of you watching know, that's a fake name. They're actually Arabs who were renamed Palestinians by Yasser Arafat after the Six-Day War, okay? But there is an eastern section of Jerusalem, but there is no such thing as East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem in capital letters is fake news. Fake news, okay? How about the BDS movement? Excuse me. Boycott, divest, and sanction. There is tremendous economic pressure brought to bear on Israel by many nations and many organizations. In fact, many church groups have signed on to the BDS movement. The BDS movement is an attempt to cripple the economy of Israel based on the presumption that Israel is discriminating against the so-called Palestinians. Again, fake news. And for those of you who pay attention to the news, the quartet, which is the four female rookies in Congress right now, all of whom hate Israel. And Ilham Omar introduced a resolution in an effort to try to get Congress to sign on to support the BDS movement. And blessedly, the House of Representatives just passed a resolution overwhelmingly supporting Israel and rejecting the BDS movement. So, Ilham Omar, if you're watching, like she's going to be watching, right? Anyway, but the BDS movement is a worldwide movement, and a lot of people have signed on to it. Many celebrities have signed on to it. As I said, a lot of church organizations, most notably Presbyterian Church USA. They were the first to really launch BDS resolution back in 1994. No, I think it was 2004, excuse me. Yes, they have very much led the field, and a lot of other church organizations have as well. How about apartheid? We're an apartheid state, right? We're just like South Africa used to be. in the days before Nelson Mandela was elected. According to these people, we are doing the same thing. They're using the same terminology. Yet, are the Arabs that live in Israel living in camps that have walls around them? Are they not allowed to go out into the city? Are they not allowed to be citizens? Are they not allowed to own property? Are they not allowed to be elected? All of that is fake news, my friends. The Arab citizens, the Arabs in Israel, are full citizens. They have the right to vote, which they do. They have the right to own property, which they do. They own their own businesses. They are professors, they're doctors, they're lawyers, they're truck drivers, they're gas station attendants as well. They work in supermarkets. They do everything that the Jews do. As a matter of fact, there are even Arab political parties in the Knesset, which is our version of a parliament or Congress. Arab political parties in the Knesset that absolutely outwardly call for the destruction of the state of Israel. Can you imagine if a U.S. senator stood up and called for the destruction of the United States on the floor of the Senate or the House of Representatives? What do you think would happen? Well, in Israel, they say we're not democratic. How much more democratic can you be than allowing a duly, legally elected political representative stand up on the floor of your parliament and call for the destruction of the country? I'm sorry, my friends. Apartheid is a term that does not apply. Even de Klerk, who was the president in South Africa when apartheid existed, he has even come out and said Israel is definitely not apartheid. There is no comparison, and anyone who uses that term to describe Israel, plain and simple, does not know the meaning of the word apartheid. Have you heard of Apartheid Week? Yes, on campuses all around the world, they have a weekly event which dramatizes and promotes their effort to promote Israel as an apartheid state. This is an actual event that takes place for a full week on college campuses in the United States and around the world. Israel Apartheid Week. Fake news. And then you also have the Association of Muslim Students and the Muslim Student Unions. They are very active on campuses all over the world, and especially in the United States. How about the general anti-Semitism? Anti-Semitism has existed since the days of Jesus Yeshua. The term Christ killers goes all the way back to when he was crucified. Anti-Semitism is ugly. Anti-Semitism is hatred of the Jews for one reason, because they are Jews. And you know what? A large portion of the Christian church subscribes to anti-Semitism in the form of replacement theology or supersessionism. What is that? Simple. Because the Jewish people did not corporately accept Jesus Yeshua as Messiah, therefore they abrogated their position as the promise holders of God's covenant, and the Christians inherited all those promises. The Jews are out. In fact, some people will tell you that Jeremiah 31 says that there's a new covenant, and it does. However, those who subscribe to replacement theology will try to convince you that the new covenant does not include the Jews. And if you read Jeremiah 31, 32, 33, you will see who God is making the covenant with. He's making it with the house of Judah and the house of Israel. Who is that? That's the Jewish people. And at the end of that paragraph, he says, and I will forgive them and remember their sins no more. God is talking about the Jewish people. So for anyone who thinks Jeremiah 31 is the end of God's covenant with the Jews and the beginning of a brand new Gentile or anti-Jewish covenant, fake news, fake news. How about Islam and the general Arab world? Do you know that one of the key goals of Islam is to obliterate the Jewish people? Have you heard of the Saturday people and the Sunday people? Well, one of the chief goals of Islam is to kill the Saturday people first. Those are the Jews, because Saturday is Shabbat. And then the Sunday people, which is the Christians. So we are right in the crosshairs of one of the foundational goals of Islam. We need to be destroyed. How about Iran? Every other day we hear about Iran claiming they're going to wipe out Israel. They send up rockets with "Death to Israel" painted on the sides. Even with Iran's dispute with the U.S. and the oil tanker issues and this and that, their leaders say that if the U.S. attacks Iran, guess who Iran is going to attack? Israel. Israel. So we have Iran that we have to deal with. How about their proxies? Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria. Hamas in the Gaza Strip and in also Judea, Samaria. Iran says, snaps their fingers, and boom, we've got them attacking us. Hezbollah in Lebanon has over 100,000 rockets pointed directly at us. I can look out my window right here where I'm sitting, and I can actually see the border with Lebanon. That's how close we are. So if the rockets start flying, and Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, that sounds like a rock group. No, never mind. He has said they're willing to start the next war. So we would ask for your prayers, especially if the rockets start flying, because they can reach where we are very, very easily. What about the Palestinian narrative? What's the Palestinian narrative? Well, everything that you've been told about the so-called Palestinians has been made up. Even the term Palestinians. There's no such group as the Palestinians. Do you know that before 1967, who the Palestinians actually were? Jews. Watch a movie, if you ever get a chance, made in 1960 by Otto Preminger, starring Paul Newman and Eva Marie Saint, called Exodus. Now, it's a fictional family, but it's set against the background of real events surrounding the rebirth of the nation of Israel, 1948. And Peter Lawford, the late Peter Lawford, plays a British soldier, and in that movie, he uses the term Palestinians. Who is he referring to in 1960? Not the Palestinians that we know today, Jews. The term Palestinians that is being used today was conceived by the late Yasser Arafat, whom after the war of 48 and 67, the Six-Day War, and the Arab people, many of them were displaced, okay, because they had a goal of wanting to destroy Israel, and their Arab nations, brethren nations, did not want to repatriate them. He wanted to call attention to them on the world stage. So instead of calling them Arabs, which they are, Syrians, Lebanese, Jordanians, Egyptians, or what have you. By the way, Arafat himself was an Egyptian. He came up with a new term to give attention to them so people could identify them uniquely. And the term that he gave them is Palestinians. And they have attempted to usurp and recreate one dialogue after another ever since then. Do you know that the Palestinian narrative has been promoting Jesus as a Palestinian for many, many, many years? Even Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority, who is not a believer, he's a Muslim, But he has been known to make certain ridiculous statements, such as the Mother Mary was a Palestinian, that Jesus was the first Palestinian martyr. And there are a number of so-called Palestinian Christians that attend conferences like Christ at the Checkpoint that promote a Palestinian dialogue, that the church, the roots of the church, are not Christian, and they're certainly not Jewish. Oh, God forbid. But the church itself, the roots of the church, is Palestinian. Yes, this is what they promote. You can look all of this up. How about what goes on inside Israel itself? What about terrorism? Every day we deal with a potential stabbing in Jerusalem, at the Damascus Gate, or at a checkpoint, or a ramming by a vehicle, or sometimes just a bomb that blows something up. Terrorism has been going on since even before Israel was reborn. Over 4,000 Israeli civilians have died at the hands of Muslim terrorism. What about rocket fire? The towns near the Gaza Strip. Since 2001, over 20,000 rockets have been fired at Israeli communities from the Gaza Strip. 20,000. What do you think would happen if one rocket came into Texas or Arizona or California from Mexico? What do you think would happen? Israel has endured over 20,000 rockets. Let's talk about the parties from the Arab world, the PLO, Fatah, Hamas. Do you know that every single one of them has a constitution, and their constitutions require the destruction of the state of Israel? Yes, you can look it up. Each one of them require the destruction. How do you have a two-state solution when these people that we're supposed to form a two-state solution with all have constitutions that require our destruction, our complete annihilation? What part of our right to exist are we supposed to negotiate? Hi, I had a little momentary editing glitch, so I'm back. I apologize. Earlier in the message, I mentioned to you about the UN and how crazily anti-Israel they are. Yes, I said crazily. Is that a word? I hope so. Well, it is now. Do you know that in the past couple of days, the United Nations Council on Women's Rights passed a resolution condemning one nation and one nation only in the entire world that violates women's rights? And guess which nation they condemned in the resolution? Israel. Here it is, right here. It's amazing. If any country in the Middle East gives women's rights, it's Israel. Do you know how women are treated in fundamentalist Muslim countries? Like property. Literally like property. And yet Israel is singled out by the United Nations Council on Women's Rights as the only nation in the world that violates women's rights. Crazy. Well, lastly, I'd like to talk to you for a couple of minutes about the messianic body here in Israel. It's messy. In Israel, believe it or not, and this is going to probably astound you because it generally astounds most people who are not familiar with the lay of the land in Israel. Do you know that over 90% of the Messianic congregations in Israel do not have a Torah? Yep. Now, Israel's Messianic congregations are very different than the U.S. and in most other places, because outside of Israel, the majority of people that attend Messianic congregations are not Jewish. Most of them are Gentile. In fact, we have been in Messianic congregations where there isn't a single Jew at all, only Gentiles. Here in Israel, of course, that's very different. The Messianic congregations are overwhelmingly populated by Jews, and yet over 90% of the Messianic congregations in Israel do not have a Torah. The majority of Messianic Jews here in Israel believe that the Torah is not necessary. They don't need one. Even after reading Matthew 5:17 through 20, they think that Yeshua did away with Torah, when in fact it says precisely the opposite of that. There's a wonderful Messianic rabbi. His name is Rabbi Yitzhak Shapira. He wrote a book called Return of the Kosher Pig. You've probably heard of it. If you haven't, I would urge you to get it. It's an incredible book. It focuses on how Yeshua is determined to be divine and the Messiah, and it comes from ancient sage Jewish writings. Yes, an incredible book. And he has been leading a revival of bringing Torahs to Israel the last couple of years. And so we're very happy to indicate that we know him, we love him, we stand with his movement, and slowly there is a Torah awakening going on here in Israel. But isn't it ironic that of all places in the world, the one place where there is a distinct absence of authentic Messianic Jewish faith that includes Torah is here in Israel? It's incredible. So, yes, the Messianic body is a little crazy. We also have other challenges in that there are some very, very extreme ultra-Orthodox Jews that actually persecute Jewish believers in Israel. There are two organizations that we know of. One is called Lahava, and the other one is called Yad L'Achim, and they have been known to do some very nasty things. In fact, at times in the past, it hasn't happened recently, but they have been known to torch Messianic congregations. In fact, the one that we attend in its former location was torched. Now again, we want to emphasize this is an extreme element of the ultra-Orthodox. Most of the Orthodox don't like Messianic Jews as it is, because they think that we have become idolaters. But some of them, quite extreme sect of them, has done some very nasty things to Messianic Jews. We need to pray for them, because they got a lot of stuff right. They're just missing Mashiach, Messiah. They've got to get that. So we need to keep our Orthodox brethren in prayer. And so I'm going to bring the message to a close, but I wanted to just share all these things with you in hope that maybe wherever you are, if you're facing challenges in your everyday life, believe me, we have all of those same challenges here in Israel, but with all the other things that I mentioned. And so maybe it might give you pause to just sort of ramp up your prayer a little bit, gain a little bit of a new perspective or what have you, because life in Israel is very, very challenging. We lived all of our lives in the U.S., and adjusting to life in Israel has really been one of the most incredible, uplifting and frustrating seasons of our life. But you know what? As challenging as it is, and as difficult as it is, and believe me, it is, we have the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who watches over Israel, who never slumbers or sleeps, and will not allow any weapon formed against us to prosper. So I hope this message has blessed you. We would certainly love to hear from you. We covet your prayers, your support. If this message has blessed you or anything else that we have done, please consider going to our website, blessisraelnetwork.com, making a one-time donation. We are totally dependent on donations from lovely, wonderful people such as yourself. You can also do a recurring donation if you provide the information. $20 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month. Every little bit helps. And it allows us to continue doing the work that we're doing here in Israel, giving a dedicated platform to the Messianic body so you can see and hear what they're doing to help build the kingdom right here in Israel. That is what we're doing. And it takes resources for us to do that. So if the Lord leads you, please consider standing with us in partnership to help our ministry grow so we can bring more Messianic ministries to you and you can hear and see what they're doing. So that's it for now. God bless you, and hopefully we'll see you soon on an upcoming trip. And you can always invite us to your congregation. Just send us a note and we're happy to consider scheduling a personal visit to your congregation. God bless you for now.